So I cashed in with 2 out of 3 complimentary plays on Saturday, and I've won 22 out of 33 overall since my return about 3 weeks ago. Not too shabby with the plays I'm giving away. On Saturday, I scored with both Michigan, Penn State, and California and Arizona State going over the posted price. Definitely on the wrong side of that Notre Dame Duke game, but hey, 2 out of 3 with the plays I'm giving away. I can live with that. 22 out of 33. You can live with that too. So far in the NFL with the freebies this season, I've gone 6-1-1, and I've got 3 more free selections for today's card. Let's start it off with the Cincinnati-Denver game. Guys, I think this is a good spot to jump on the Bengals. Listen, Denver's enjoyed the cushion of playing at home the first 2 weeks. First game down 17-10 in the fourth quarter to Carolina before the Panthers self-destructed, shot themselves in the foot, and allowed Denver to come back to win that game. Last week, big deal. They beat the Colts. I don't think the Colts are any good, especially defensively, especially with that leaky offensive line. And the Broncos took advantage of it and took care of business and absolutely pulverized Andrew Luck. But now they're on the road, taking on a Bengals team that was fortunate to survive 7 sacks of Andy Dalton in week number 1 against the Jets and managed to win that game on a field goal in the final minute. Last week, playing in the lousy conditions in Pittsburgh, the rain, the muddy field, they lost to the Steelers. First 2 games of the season, they've been unable to run the ball. Now, obviously, the Bengals have got to try to run the ball and be successful at it. They've only run for 103 yards in 2 games, and they're second to last in the league with a per-carry average of 2.8 yards through 2 games. They've got to be able to establish the run because they've got to keep Von Miller and Bruce Marshall and company off of Andy Dalton in this game because, remember, Jets got to Dalton 7 times, okay? But the Steelers only got to Dalton once last week, so the offensive line did a better job. And, of course, the offensive line's not going to have to deal with DeMarco Ware, who's now going to be out for like 6 to 8 weeks for the Broncos after getting hurt and last week's win for Denver against the Colts. So I think that's a plus. And listen, the Bengals have certainly been a decent home favorite here of late, 13-6 against the spread. And once more, this is Denver's first road test. Also going to be Trevor Siemian's first road test. I think this is going to be a close game, but I'm willing to invest in the Bengals here. With the price at 3.5, I'm obviously going to buy down the half point on Cincinnati if this line is anywhere between 3 and 4.5. And I like Cincinnati in this one as my first complimentary selection. I'm looking at this game between Miami and Cleveland. Listen, Browns, 3 games, 3 different starting quarterbacks, and I think they're a team that doesn't have many playmakers to begin with. I think they're the worst team in the NFL defensively. They don't have much in terms of rushing the quarterback. Their secondary, not much to offer. You saw how both Carson Wentz and Joe Flacco shredded them. Ryan Tannehill came to life last week against the Patriots, 32 for 45, 389 yards. Yes, 2 interceptions, but 2 touchdown passes, and you know how good that Patriots secondary and defense is. Now, true, did the Patriots let up last week after jumping out to that huge 24-point lead? Most likely, but still, Tannehill had a good game, even in the worst of situations, being down by 3+ touchdowns. I think this is a situation here where Miami, after opening on the road at Seattle, then traveling cross-country to New England, now coming back home, taking on a Cleveland team starting the USC rookie Cody Kessler. Even though they're a 10-point favorite, this is a situation I think you've got to invest on the Dolphins in this particular spot. Plus, you look at the Brownies. They were up 20-0 last week at home, and they managed to lose that game to Baltimore 25-20, and they lose their quarterback in the process. Cleveland 2-9-1 against the spread in their last 12 games overall. So even though the Dolphins are a lousy 5-11-1 ATS in their last 16 at home, I think this situation dictates that you go ahead and lay the points in with Miami in this one. So Cincinnati and Miami, a couple of home chalks, your first 2 complimentary plays. Your next one, I think it's a good chance here to go ahead and invest with Miami. I think you're catching Minnesota in a flat spot here. The Vikings, week number 1 at Tennessee, they had to come back with that big second half surge that really was a game where the Titans gave them the win, gave them the ATS cover, because the Titans turned the ball over twice, 2 defensive turnovers converted by the Vikings into 14 points that gave them the win and the road cover. Last week, yes, the defense certainly delivered against Green Bay, but how flat were the Packers? How poorly did the Packers play offensively? How off was Aaron Rodgers in that game? Now, Sam Bradford had a very good game, okay? Took care of business, definitely dissected that Green Bay secondary, and he did it without having any run support. Adrian Peterson, though, really was missing in action in week number 1 against Tennessee and for most of that game against Green Bay before suffering the knee injury. Now, of course, he's going to miss this game and many more after undergoing knee surgery. But now you've got the Vikings on the road. It's not their home opener in their new stadium. You've got a Carolina team that choked away a game after blowing a 17-10 fourth quarter lead at Denver. Nearly choked away a game against San Francisco after a middling first half, opened up the big lead against the 49ers, but then tried to give it away with 4 turnovers, but managed to put up 529 yards on the board in offense. And you started to see that Carolina team that last year averaged a little over 31 points a game get rolling offensively. Cam Newton, 4 touchdown passes, 353 yards passing last week. Even though Jonathan Stewart got hurt, you saw the ground game produce as well. Carolina's defense, awful the first 2 weeks. Just awful against Denver and against San Francisco. But the Panthers are going to put points on the board. Is Sam Bradford going to have another big game? He possibly could, because listen, the Panthers secondary, I wasn't that impressed with them last year with Josh Norman. I'm certainly not impressed with them so far this year through 2 games without Josh Norman. I mean, Blaine Gabbert, other than the 2 fourth quarter interceptions last week that gave Carolina backers the cover, he looked pretty damn good there for 3.5 quarters against Carolina's secondary. So I look at this game. It could be a high-scoring game, but I'm more than willing to lay the 7 with Carolina because I think this is just a bad spot for Minnesota. But I can see why Viking backers are in love with the Vikings. Listen, you got a team that Minnesota was 14-3 against the spread last year. You got a Minnesota team that's covered 11 of its last 12 as an underdog, including 7 straight covers as a puppy. But flip side, I always say when people recite these ATS trends, you give me one side, I can give you 7 stats that support the other. And here's one. Panthers have covered 9 of their last 11 as a dog, including last week's miracle comeback cover as a double-digit chalk at home to cover against the 49ers. I just think this is a great spot. They are underpriced here, and this is a spot to go with Carolina. So that's going to be your 3rd complimentary selection. Miami, Carolina, Cincinnati, 3 home chalks. Favorites last week had the slight edge. Home favorites also had the advantage last week. I say go with those 3 home chalks, and those are your complimentary plays for this Sunday card. I wish you well, guys, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow when we take a preview of that Monday night game between the Saints and the Falcons. Good luck, everybody. Talk to you again on Monday morning.